In this Demon Souls Remake guide, I'm going to be covering my Moonlight Valkyrie build, which uses the now legendary weapon Large Sword of Moonlight. This build is particularly good for beginners who wish to PvP, or for those who like to co-op and ward off invaders. It can also be used effectively in PvE because of its high magic damage. The Moonlight Valkyrie build uses the Large Sword of Moonlight, which does 100% magic damage. Many enemies in the game are weak to magic damage, making it particularly good against them, but what's really great is that the sword cannot be blocked by shields. This makes it excellent against human enemies that block a lot and against players that use shields, since it renders them ineffective. Combined with the sword, you'll be using the Adjudicator's shield and Regenerator's ring, which heal you over time. This will allow you to fight PvP battles where your enemies will have to press his or her advantage when you are low on health, or you will just heal back up. This often puts them in situations where you can predict their attacks and can swing things back in your favor, which is why this build works well for PvP. There are two classes that work well for this build, and these are Priest and Temple Knight. Priests start out with a mace and heater shield, while Temple Knights start out with a halberd and heater shield. Temple Knights have heavier armor than Priests, but theirs is more resistant. Either of these classes work, and I think it really comes down to which equipment you like more. Note that you can even make the Knight class into this build, but it will require more soul levels to achieve an optimal stat spread. No matter whether you chose the Priest or Temple Knight class, the first thing you should realize is that how you were set up at the beginning of the game is not how this build will play out after you gain the Large Sword of Moonlight. It's not a bad idea to play around with the Bastard Sword once you get it, or farm some souls and purchase the Claymore. You will only be able to two-hand these weapons because of your low strength, but it'll give you a better idea of your playstyle. If you do decide to try either of these weapons before you get the Large Sword of Moonlight, then you will realize right away that your stamina will only allow you to swing 2 or 3 times at most before you run out. This is usually barely enough to finish one enemy, and it can put you in a bad situation if there are many enemies around you. This makes endurance a very vital stat for this build because it increases the number of swings you can do before you must let your stamina recover. Having a powerful weapon doesn't do a lot of good if you can only swing it twice. Additionally, you should learn to AoE enemies down with horizontal attacks of these weapons so as to further conserve stamina. Miracles are spells that require faith to use, and they use mana just like regular spells that use the magic stat. Miracles do not play a huge part of this build because of the heavy focus on the Large Sword of Moonlight. This is because you will already need faith, endurance, and vitality for this build to work, and adding intelligence in order to gain enough mana to use miracles regularly will hinder the speed at which this build comes together. However, if you plan on playing an NG Plus and beyond, you should consider spending points in intelligence and working miracles into your playstyle. Moonlight Valkyries only need 3 stats to be effective, and those are faith, endurance, and vitality, as I just mentioned. However, depending on whether you selected Priest or not, you may need to spend a few points in strength to use the Adjudicator's shield. Faith is what increases the damage of the Large Sword of Moonlight, and you need 24 minimally to wield it to begin with. You should be near 24 faith when you get the sword, if not at it already. Endurance is next on the list, and you'll need to increase this in order to swing more times with your sword, but to also increase the equip weight you can carry. Having higher maximum equip weight allows you to wear heavier armor and still be under 50%, so you can roll normally. Lastly, you want to place some points into Vitality because you'll be getting hit with this build since you are likely to use a shield much less often. You're aiming for a stat spread that looks something like this eventually. This stat spread will give you the most bang for your buck on sword damage while giving you the maximum amount of stamina you can have. Eventually, you'll want to take Faith to 50 in order to increase your damage even more. 30 Vitality is the breakpoint for diminishing returns, but you'll likely go higher than this over time to keep from being one-shot in NG Plus and beyond. In this section, we'll take a look at what equipment you need in order to play the Moonlight Valkyrie build effectively. Keep in mind that you will likely change this up some depending on what section of the game you're on, but this should serve to give you some idea of what setups you're looking at. First, let's take a look at early game. At the beginning of the game, you'll want to pick up and equip the Cling Ring as soon as you can to further increase your health in soul form. You'll likely be in soul form a good amount of the time, so this can really help keep you alive. You can pick up the Bastard Sword or farm souls to purchase the Claymore from the Dregling Merchant in order to get a feel for this playstyle, but this is optional since you'll be sure to learn once you gain the Large Sword of Moonlight. Be sure to pick up the Ring of Great Strength beneath the Blue Dragon in the Boletarian Palace so that you can use heavier armor more easily. Equip it immediately after getting it and adjust your armor and equipment around so that you're under 50%. From this point onward, try not to go over 50%. Take off your helmet if you need to, as it has the lowest armor, and shift your armor around again when you pick up some lighter pieces so that you have something equipped in each slot. It's better to have 2 pieces of light armor than 1 piece of heavy. Once you've defeated Phalanx, you should head next to the Shrine of Storms in order to pick up a few valuable items. First, you can pick up the Crescent Falchion for an early game boost to damage if you wish, but it's completely optional, and if you're doing fine, then don't worry about grabbing it. Second, you'll want to grab the Regenerator's Ring that you can swap out for the Giant Ring of Strength once you hit the Swamp of Sorrow to offset poison damage. And third, you'll want to grab the Adjudicator's Shield since it also heals you over time, even if it's on your back while you're two-handing a weapon. This will also help with the Swamp of Sorrow, but you'll need this later on as well to heal while you are fighting with the Longsword of Moonlight. Valley of Defilement should be next after gathering these items, and the first thing you want to grab here is the Blessed Mace. It can be tricky to find and again is another optional item, but it can help make your way through the swamp as it heals you over time as well and stacks with the Adjudicator's Shield and Regenerator's Ring. Once you make it to the swamp, you'll have a second chance to pick up a Regenerator's Ring if you haven't already, and then you'll be looking to acquire the dual gold set. This is past the first fog wall and into the swamp on the right instead of up the ramp. You'll find a lone slug out there and you can kill it to gain this set, and this is what makes you look like a Valkyrie. Note that you must be female in order to use this set, so make sure to change genders if you need to. Not far after the dual gold set is the Long Sword of Moonlight, and you'll need to head up some ramps with some slugs to find it, knock it down, and then carefully drop down and grab it from the middle of about 20 slugs. Once you have it, you should be able to wipe them out quickly. Final tips. Remember to keep the Adjudicator shield minimally on your back when fighting to gain the extra health regen from it. It doesn't have to be in your hand, but if you swap your offhand to your talisman, for example, it will stop working. Always try to keep your equip burden at 50% or lower. Move armor around to make this happen if need be, but you don't want to face good players while fat rolling if you can help it, bosses either. Make sure to use the Adjudicator shield or another shield against spear enemies, as these are the Achilles heel of this build. They have longer reach and faster attack than your sword, so you can't just swing away at these enemy types or players. Use your shield to create an opening when possible. You can upgrade both the Adjudicator shield and Long Sword of Moonlight using colorless demon souls. There are only so many of these you can get per playthrough, so choose wisely how you use them. The Adjudicator shield will gain increased health regen with each upgrade, while the Large Sword of Moonlight will only give you a small boost to scaling. Just because this build doesn't focus on using miracles doesn't mean you can't use them with this build. Miracles like Cure, Regeneration, and Resurrection all work very well with this build, and you can always use Spice to replenish mana if you need it. Lastly, if you plan to keep playing this build into NG Plus and beyond, make sure that you place some points into Intelligence in order to gain more mana. This will allow you to use miracles like Second Chance and God's Wrath, which are game changers. Stay tuned for more Demon Souls build guides as we explore just what kind of builds you can make, and be sure to check out the Demon Souls wiki if you have specific questions about the game.